Paige Mackenzie. Welcome to A.PUTNAM's Women in Golf.
Thank you. I'm so glad to finally get to meet you face to face and get a chance to chat.
I know we've had emails back and forth, and this is always the way it goes with like coordinating time and how can we find a window of opportunity to chat. So we're so thrilled to have you. And to do a quick introduction, Paige, you are Golf Channel analyst, and we cannot wait to hear how you got to this point and what you're up to.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I've just been in golf my whole life, and somehow some little girl that was 8 years old playing on the back of the range ended up now being able to talk about professional golf, both men and women. So it's been
Oh,
a
so
long journey,
cool.
but a really fun one.
And I know within that long journey that like you've been an incredible player. So I think it's interesting. Every woman that we've interviewed has such a different story and relationship with golf, whether it's been intense and I'm a player or I love golf and I'm a painter. Like, it's been such a wide spread. And so I'm so excited to hear kind of where you've been. I know you've been in Washington and you recently had a big 2023 being inducted to the Hall of Fame and just some like really cool stuff. Not to mention your mom, which I can totally relate to. Not I even on like cherry on top is that you're a boy mom. So
Definitely.
we
It shapes
we
you.
have
It shapes you.
it it does. We have a lot to talk about. And when I start any of these, I always ask the question of just how did golf come into your life from like the very beginning?
Sure. My parents both love to play, and that was what they did as a married couple before they had children.
Hmm.
So they were married for 7 years before they had my older brother, who's 18 months older than me. So they kind of had a back to back two kids. And then when he was old enough to basically be in a stroller, they pushed him around the golf course. My dad actually built a baby seat on top of the bag on the push cart. I mean, this is
Stop.
way ahead of the time where kids were thought of to be on the golf course at that young of age. So
Yes.
then when I came around, it was the same thing. So we grew up around it. We didn't
Yeah.
necessarily have like a future planned out in the game, but my parents just genuinely loved to play. And
Hmm.
so they didn't want kids to stop them from going to the golf course. So they
Oh,
always brought us
that's so
along.
cool.
And little did they know, 15 years later, both of us would end up playing professional golf. My brother played Corn Ferry Tour, Canadian Tour, and then never quite made it on the PGA Tour. But I mean, he was Walker Cup player. He was number one in the country in his senior year of college, um, and so it was kind of cool to
Crazy.
have a partner in growing up that way because he pushed me for sure to become a better player. But that's how we got started. It was really all
That
about my
is
parents.
that is so cool. I'm curious, does he still have this contraption that he engineered?
No, I do have a photo. There's like one photo is all of this device, and it was
That's
funny because he told me it was the last day. Like the only photo we have is like the last day he said they ever used it, and my brother was probably 4,
oh,
and I was
yeah,
like on the shoulders of my dad. They always walked, so they would just take us. And they
yeah,
started at a 9-hole public course. Like this wasn't.
yeah,
I mean, we
yeah.
eventually moved to a country club, but this
Mhm.
was just what they enjoy doing.
That's so amazing. And nowadays, I'm sure as a mom, and we'll get to kind of the stage of your life that you're in, like I'm so curious to hear like how that's going and how golf fits in there. Because I know I like my husband and I have always made it a point to have golf be kind of a date night and a getaway for us.
Yep.
And now we've got boys that are a little bit older. Like I've got 5 boys and they age from like 10 to 3. And so
Wow.
now trying to get kind of the same thing that your parents did. It's like, we love to golf, like take them out for a walk. I know
Sure.
my husband's much better about it than I am, being like, after school, I'm taking them. We're going to walk 9 or walk how many holes we
Yeah.
can get in. um, and trying to figure out how to do that. I kind of wish we had started as early as that to be like, you just tote them along. Like, it's just what you do. And
Right.
it is when you always feel like it's a disruption, like going on a plane with your kids, right? In a
Correct.
way, you have that same mentality, I think, on the golf course, and it shouldn't be that way. I know some golf courses are more susceptible to that than others, but that's so special. And not to mention
I
that both
admire
your
the fact that they did that because they truly
yeah,
didn't let children stop the life that they wanted to live.
Right, right. And I'm sure you know that more than anything. Like people tell you that all the time, right? Like don't let that slow you down and not go to dinners and not go to like all those
Right.
things that are good
Easier
for
said
your
than
kids.
done.
Oh my, isn't it? I know. So true. But that's so cool. So what I'm assuming you played through high school and everything?
Yes. So being in the state of Washington, not a huge junior golf presence. I was in
Yeah.
a group of juniors that were, I would call like Fred Couples babies, like not
Yeah.
literally, but we all, he won the Masters when I was 9. And
Oh
so
my
anybody
gosh.
that grew up around our age, including the Putnam brothers, Michael and Andrew and Ryan Moore, my
Oh.
brother, there was a group of us that all ended up playing professional golf. Andres Gonzalez, we all played professional
Wow.
golf, but it was literally, we were all 9 or 10 years old when that happened. And so I think it was a huge influence into what we felt like was possible in the game. And so certainly we all pushed each other and celebrated each other's successes, and everybody played college golf. And my brother and I both ended up at the University of Washington, which
Right.
everybody says, it's not really the hotbed of golf. And I'm like, you know what though? I was a better player when I left because I had to struggle through the difficult temperatures and weather
Wow.
conditions and all of that. And I came from Eastern Washington, which had snow during the winters. So I played basketball all the way
100%.
through high school.
Okay.
So I had a break. And so the
Yeah.
idea that I could play in January that was new to me. I didn't care that it was 40 degrees and raining. But like I
Right.
said, it made me a stronger player in the end because of it.
That's incredible. You'll appreciate this because we were just down at Waste Management and we did this really cool event with Tawny Putnam, Andrew's wife. And
Yes,
so I have to ask, I'm assuming you know them.
I know Andrew. I do not know his wife.
Okay. So, I mean, she's like a sweetheart, as to be expected. But we did a cool PGA Tour Wives event with them. And
Yes.
I get asked the question all the time, are you related to Andrew Putnam? And the answer is no. But coincidentally have met them through this and they've been so sweet and genuine. And what's so funny, I remember him being like, I'm like, are you ready for this? Like, this is such horrible weather. Nobody expected to be down at Waste Management in 45-degree
Right.
weather and rain. And he was this is my,
What
like,
I grew up with.
what I grew up with. This is what I played in. It's like, if there's anybody who should be okay with this weather, it's me.
That's
So it's
great.
watching all of his Instagram through like the practice rounds and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, he probably is in his element. And then
Sure. I mean, I
some
don't know if
people
anybody was necessarily in their element that week because it was brutal, but yes,
wasn't
they
it?
are.
I know.
He was much better prepared.
Oh, it's so funny. That's so cool. And so obviously a really good career in high school. Did you think all throughout that you wanted to play collegiate golf?
At a certain point, I looked at it as a means to an end. I was looking
Yeah.
at it like a way to pay for college, and
Yeah.
I was very academically motivated in high school, and that was a high priority of mine.
Mhm.
And I knew it would give my parents some relief to not have to worry about paying for
Yeah.
school. So, yes, it
Yeah.
became important to me and my family. And probably, I mean, we knew 14, 15 years old that there was a good chance that I would be able to play somewhere collegiately. It was
Hmm.
just a matter of what kind of school. And I mean, I love the education I got at University of Washington as well.
I
It
bet.
stayed
So
important through college as well.
yeah. So how far was home to University of Washington? Like what was your commute home?
It was just over 2 hours, but over a mountain range.
Oh.
So I
Okay. So
didn't
you were
get home
far
that
enough.
often. Yes.
Yeah, you were far enough away. It wasn't like I'm driving home for dinner tonight. I'm going back to
No.
school.
And I was
Yeah.
so ready to be out. I mean, my mom
Yeah.
always, she said to me when I was a senior in high school, there's something very natural about moms and daughters kind of butting heads at the end
Yeah.
of like high
Mhm.
school because you're ready to be apart. You're ready for that journey into being an adult and individual on your own.
Right,
And
right.
she was very right at the time. I'm very close with my mom now, but at the
Yeah.
time, I was ready to be out of the house.
Yeah, for sure. I get that. And I've got two brothers and in the middle of both of them. And so special relationship with my mom, but I know we've had moments in our lives where we're like, all right, we're good. This is probably the right time to have some space. Oh, so cool. So what did you study at University of Washington then?
So I was a business major. And
Okay.
it's got a great business school, a highly competitive business school. And then I ended up
Yeah.
minoring in communications. And I thought
Okay.
for sure at one point, my roommate and I, she was a runner. And
Uh-huh.
I obviously played golf, but we were both in the business school. And we were like so excited about dressing in our business attire and working on Wall Street one day. And like that's what I thought I was going to do.
So
I
funny.
actually interned. So my sophomore year, I was injured. So I took the
Hmm.
entire, I had a medical red shirt year my sophomore year. And I didn't know if I'd ever play golf again. And so I
Wow.
really truly had to find an identity beyond golf.
Yeah.
And that's when because of that fifth year, I was able to do an internship. And interestingly, an internship at the business school, you have to work 20 hours to get 2 credits.
Hmm.
So it's not like it's an extensive amount of work for very little
Yeah.
school credit. So I would never
Yeah.
have been able to do it had I not been injured.
100%.
So I worked at a financial planning office in a cubicle and I helped 3 planners, do like file work and
Yeah.
data entry and things like that. And I enjoyed it. But one day I was sitting in the cubicle and it was a gorgeous day outside. And I was like, man, I wish I was playing golf.
Yeah.
And it sounds
Aw.
so silly, but it was at that moment that I was like, you know what? It is a choice. And it's
Hmm.
not just something that, is going to fall into my lap one day. Like
Yeah.
I can choose to do this. I can choose to love it and work at it. And that was a very pivotal moment for me in
Yeah.
deciding what I wanted to do with my life. And it obviously took a pretty sharp right turn because I'm not working
Yeah.
on Wall Street anymore, as I thought I would. I don't get to wear pencil skirts every day, but
Right.
I do have a pretty cool job that I do love, which is awesome.
I would say so. So did you, at that point, obviously you recovered from your injury and then got back into junior, senior. Did you play an extra year then because of that red shirt?
I did,
Yeah.
yes.
And did you finish your, like, were you still through all that a business major? You said you were, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Awesome.
And
Did you,
I brought credits in, so I was ahead
oh,
of
yeah.
track
Yeah.
before I got injured. And then I'd actually talked to my college coach about starting my master's.
Yeah.
And then she told me that my scholarship was going to run out in 4 years. And I was like, but I have a fifth year of eligibility because I
Yeah.
had gotten an academic scholarship as well. So the
Right.
academic ran out. And
Oh,
so I ended up instead
fascinating.
graduating a quarter early
Got
of
it.
my fifth
So
year.
finished your season. Yeah. Oh, that's fat. Were you still on campus, like living on campus and just didn't have classes and stuff?
Yes, interesting NCAA. I mean, NCAA has so many rules, but you can
Yeah.
compete up to 60 days post graduation. And
Okay.
so I graduated in March, and then NCAA's was in May. And so
Okay,
then,
got it.
so I was done in March. So I only had like 60 days really of
Yeah.
no school. And, but it was
Right.
a good transition for me. And I only took one quarter, one class, the winter quarter.
Hmm.
And so really my last 2 quarters in school, I was effectively a professional golfer. Like I worked
Yeah.
as much as I wanted to and didn't have a whole lot of school obligations. So it was a very nice and easy transition into
Right.
it becoming my job.
Right. And so, like, when you had that pivotal moment of deciding, all right, I'm not going to be a financial planner, I'm not going to work on Wall Street, in your mind professionally, were you right away to being like, I am playing professional golf and that's what I'm doing for work?
Yes. So there's
Yeah.
two pivotal moments that day, and then would be a year or two later. I qualified for the 2005 U.S. Open at Cherry Hills, and I
Awesome.
never felt like professional golf was like fulfilling. Like it
Hmm.
challenges you personally, but what does it really give back? And
Yeah.
how can you be like filled up by just
Hmm.
playing for yourself?
Yeah.
And so I kind of always struggled with that as a career. I was like, how am I going to feel good about myself if I don't give, there's no way to give back or to
Yeah.
influence anybody else. It's such a selfish job. Well, at that US Open, I was playing a practice round and it was on a Tuesday and they just let out like a junior clinic, like a first tee or something.
Cool.
So all the
Yeah.
kids were
Right.
surrounding the first green. And
Yep.
so I finished, and I remember I was playing with Katie Future. I don't remember who the third was in our practice round group, but we all came off the green and started signing autographs. And then it was my turn to hit. So they had already teed off the next hole. So I ran over, teed off, and then I came back and I signed like a couple more to finish off all the kids. And then the parents started clapping when I walked away. And I'm just a college student. Like, I wasn't a professional golfer. Like, I'm literally nobody. Like, these kids don't have a clue who I am. And it was at that moment that I realized, like, wow, this is an incredible platform. Like, there's so many people and kids specifically that look up to professional golfers. Like, you can set a great example. You can make a huge impact. And so it was those two moments that really solidified this is the direction that I wanted to go with my career.
Wow. That's so neat. And then very impactful too. I'm sure other golfers can relate to that. And especially at events like that and surrounded by just even at the Waste Management, I think we were there on Tuesday and it was their first tee and hundreds of kids. And it was really cool. Like, it's so neat. And the diversity within those kids, like,
well, you never know. And I was that kid at one point.
Yeah.
Like, and I really wanted to pitch this idea to Golf Channel to do a special on professional golfers that had been influenced by other professional golfers. So when I was 8 or 9 years old, I was at some professional golf exhibition and Blaine McAllister came off the green and had a ball in his hand and all the little boys were reaching for it. And he goes, "No, for the girl." And he gave it to me.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah, and I actually was able to tell him, 20 years later, we played in an outing together. And I was
cool.
Like you will never remember this, but like what you did meant something. So the idea that I could be full circle and be able to have that hopefully positive impact. I really think Golf Channel needs to do a series because I guarantee you every professional golfer has had those moments where they were that kid.
Absolutely. I think that's probably so true. And like you said, so powerful and impactful to so many, especially those that have gone on to play professionally. That's so neat. So what happened, like, as we kind of progress through your resume is what it always feels like, but what was next then? Because I think you jumped right into, was it a Q series? Did you get your LPGA card right after college? What was the progression then?
The summer after I graduated was special because they had the USAM and Curtis Cup were both in the state of Oregon. So for me, it was really special because it was as close to home as I was ever going to get for two really huge events. So I stayed amateur up until that point, and then I turned professional. I had a couple LPGA starts on sponsor invites before I went to Q school because we had the old just one and done. Well, it was a three or two stages, I think, at the time. And so I qualified right out of there. And so 2007 was my rookie year on tour.
That's so cool. So we're probably about the same age well, actually, you might be a little younger. I graduated 2007 from college, so we're about the same age. So that's incredible. So how long then were you kind of through that? Like, what was next? Take me through your kind of timeline of playing with all that.
Sure. So my rookie year ended up being really rough. I had a stalker when I was on tour for the majority of my first year, and that was devastating, to say the least. And it became, I don't know, all-encompassing because you kind of deal with the anxiety whether you're on the golf course or off or anywhere in life. And there's this violation of privacy, and you feel like this person wants to have a relationship that doesn't exist. So I did not play my best golf. And over the next couple of years, it was kind of rebuilding confidence-wise and emotionally. And I played okay. Like, I never look back at my professional career and feel like I did the best that I could have. It was not the career I wanted. It was not the career I was like heading for coming out of college. But, it makes you who you are, and you end up where you're supposed to end up. And ultimately what ended my career was back surgery. So I played, I had that medical red shirt my sophomore year of college. So I played 11 years before I ultimately had back surgery. And
was that injury during college back related?
Yes, it was the same disc herniation. And I was able to kind of rehab my way out of it back then, but the herniation had just gotten so big that they ultimately needed surgery, and it was fine. And I thankfully feel great now. But Golf
Wow.
Channel had already started recruiting me at the end of my career.
How did
So it
that
was,
how did that work though? Like I'm so curious how Golf Channel recruits. Is it something like you were known because you had some personality, or was it somebody you knew? Like how does that go
so I,
down?
a good question, because I've tried to put the pieces together after the fact, because
You're like,
I just got a phone call that was like, hey, can you work for the first week of Golf Channel was the Tour Championship,
uh-huh.
LPGA Tour Championship in 2012.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, oh, I mean, sure, I guess. So I don't know who originally was the first
So
person
funny.
that kind of got in somebody's ear. But
Hmm.
then 6 months later, the morning drive
Yeah.
coordinating producer contacted me, and that was the U.S. Open of 2013. So I had not qualified for the U.S. Open, and they needed an analyst in studio. And that environment, the morning drive, the morning show environment, where it's an ensemble cast, there was five or six of us every morning, was such
Hmm.
a more comfortable environment for me to
Sure.
be myself. And
Yeah.
so I was the first week with Golf Central is a little more buttoned up. It's a little more formal.
Yeah.
When I got to the morning drive set, I remember it was maybe the second or third day that week, and I was telling a story about how difficult the U.S. Open is, and just how mentally it can beat you up. And I
Hmm.
explained this day. It was a Black Wolf Run. It was a Saturday when Na Yan Choi won. And I said, I played early in the morning. It was terrible conditions. And I stopped at the convenience store, like gas station convenience store, on my way back to the hotel. I bought a six pack of beer. I parked my car in the hotel parking lot, and I took, opened
Ah.
the first beer before I got in the hotel. True story. And I did not plan on telling that story on air, but I did. And
Yeah.
in the commercial break, everybody was laughing and joking and was like, that was awesome. I'm like, you know
Oh.
what? That was the most me I've ever been, because
Sure.
it was natural to be able to tell that story. So
That's hilarious.
I don't. So somehow the producers, I think, like that I could
Yeah.
be myself a little bit in that environment,
Yeah,
and so they
and
asked
it
me back.
goes so far because that probably is so much more relatable to the population that's watching than like
Yes.
anything. That's so cool. And that's kind of nice because then, I mean, from an initial standpoint too, you're like, okay, like I can just be myself and it's okay. I can't
Yes.
imagine what it's like to be on air and feel like you've got to have your quote unquote shit together. I can't,
Yeah.
I can't imagine. So that probably was such a relief of being like, I'm in a good spot.
It was, and
That's
I got a
cool.
lot of positive reinforcement. I had a lot of great producers
Yeah.
around me when I first started, and so I was very lucky from that perspective that people were patient. You have growing pains. I mean, that's the other thing on
Yeah.
air. It's like you have these growing pains, and I just Golf Channel's been so kind to me, and it's been such a
Cool.
great place to work. So
That's
but I'll
so
never
neat.
forget that story because I was not planning on
No, that's
telling
a good one.
it.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so cool. That is neat. That's like a behind the scenes thing for sure. Now, did you, because like I guess we kind of not skipped over it, but when they first called you to do that, at that point, or did it take a bit of time before you were like, all right, this is where I'm headed? And I know you had a minor in communication, so you probably had that in your back pocket or thinking this progression could be somewhere you go. At that point, like that was that your would you call kind of your first job post playing?
I'd say it's my only job.
Only job. Okay. So and then
Yeah.
you were just like you stuck with it and you were like, this is where I want to be and this is what I want to keep doing.
Yes. So after that initial first week, the producer at the time, the coordinating producer, Jeff Newbarth, called me and basically said, we'll take you any of the weeks that you're not playing. If you're open to
Wow.
it, we would love to have you. And
Cool.
so there was only a couple weeks, maybe the rest of that fall that worked. And then in February of 2014, just 6 months later, I needed to have back surgery. So that was unplanned and it just kind of, it happened. So at that point, I was like, I'm available as
Yeah.
much as you want.
Right. I'm not playing. Yeah.
And so I took a full year off of playing and
Yep.
then came back and I played four events just truly to say goodbye on my own terms. It was
Yeah.
one of those
Right.
where I wanted to play until I was 35, but I also knew trying to squeeze out a couple more years when I know it's not good for my body and I have this incredible
Mhm.
opportunity that may not be around in 2 or 3 years.
Right, right.
So I jumped ship a little sooner out of professional golf than maybe I would have planned, but it was such an incredible opportunity. And I truly loved what I was doing. The first
Yeah.
week, in fact, the first week that I worked, that 2012 Tour Championship, I worked, and then they called me like a week or two later and they're like, "Hey, can we get your like social security number and so we can pay you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, they're
Oh
going to pay
yeah.
me." Like I didn't know they were going to pay. Like I was
Yeah.
just doing it like as a
Oh,
volunteer. And so
yeah.
I feel like I legitimately am
Oh, that's
doing a job
cool.
I would do for free because I thought that for first week
I
was.
love that. And I'm sure it's not changed at all. Like that's and I give you so much credit for even going back. Like that's not easy to say after surgery, I'm gonna go back. I think it's really
Mm,
cool. You were like, I gotta say goodbye to this and be done with it on my own terms versus forced out of it because of an injury. But I mean, that says a lot. I don't think there's a, especially when you know you had this kind of opportunity to say yes to. I don't know.
sure.
That's incredible.
Well, it's just one of those where I think a lot of professional athletes, I think, feel a kinship with other professional athletes, no matter what the
Oh,
sport.
sure.
And so
Yeah.
when I look across the board at friends that went on to play NBA or NFL and they
Yeah.
got traded without any consent, right? They just kind of,
Mhm.
the teams have control. They move them
Yeah.
around different cities. They can cut them at any time.
I know.
Golf is a great professional sport. You are truly
Yeah.
autonomous. You have so much control of your career. And I really felt like you give 30 years of your life to something. Like I want to feel good about walking away and,
Yeah.
and, and say goodbye on the right, in the right way,
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, all of that. So it was,
Right.
not great finishes those last four events, but I know for
You,
me it was necessary.
yeah, and that's really cool. And I think an unusual point to make about golf too, that it's unlike any other professional sport. And it's interesting. There's obviously plenty of things that I think have brought light to also how difficult of a sport it is in terms of
Mm,
professional being a professional sport, and that it's so self-driven and um, performance based, and the weight is on you. Like it's not a
yeah,
team effort in that you have a bad game and you're leaning on other teammates to pick you up. It's like brutal, and that's like the Netflix show. I mean, all those things that I think people just don't know about the sport. Similar to like Formula One, these things that you're just like,
sure,
holy cow, I did not know that some of these athletes, especially in golf, are paying their way to these tournaments and
sure.
they walk away not top 50. Like just how grueling that is and the pressure that's felt versus so many other sports. Like it's really
It's a
incredible.
it's a weird sport.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, do you miss it? And I say,
Yeah.
no, not really. Not
Yeah.
playing. The highs are so high, and there is
Yeah.
nothing better than playing great golf inside the ropes. There's nothing. There's nothing I could
Yeah.
do professionally, I think, that would touch hitting a great
That
shot
feeling.
and getting the
Yeah.
audience reaction and feel like you're the puppet master of like a crowd.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than
Right.
that. But the lows are so low. The lows are so low.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
so
it's such a
whenever
felt.
I've had a couple people that I roomed with
Hmm.
over the year. And
Yeah.
then at the end of the year, I like retired like two or three of my friends because it was like they were my roommate all season and that was their final year. And the comment I always make to them is congratulations for making that decision because
Yeah.
it takes more courage to leave than it does to stay.
Yeah.
There's so many
I don't
players
doubt it.
that's all they know and they just keep digging away at the
Plugging
same hole,
away.
hoping to find water. And so often it's not what's healthiest for them,
Right.
emotionally and physically and socially. But
Right.
it does take a lot of courage to leave after you've been in it for so
Yeah.
long.
Do you ever feel like you were just because we get this a lot on women in golf. I think people go through women go not women, but just since we're talking about women, but like
Yeah.
a player will go through that feeling of like I'm just overplayed. I'm overworked. The sport has just taken a toll on me where I felt a little um felt more negative about the experience than not or just burnt out kind of feeling. Did you
Yep.
ever get to that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's funny because I always, now I've started playing more golf in the
Yeah.
last couple of years as my kids are now old enough to take
Yeah.
them with me and
Cute.
I'm trying to get my husband more into it.
Hmm.
And I've explained, or I try to explain, that my relationship with the game has changed through my life. So
Yeah.
when I was a kid, it was really fun and it was just about having golf friends and some
Hmm.
competition. Then, college, highly competitive, professional, highly competitive, but then you also have that tinge of work. It's work.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
not all
Right.
fun.
Yeah.
And it's very like you eat what you kill,
Yeah.
part of it. And then now I get to enjoy golf the way that I think most people do. And I
That's
see the
really
social
cool.
side of it, and I see
Yeah.
the enjoyment of having good company for 4 hours. And
Right.
I'm like, wow, like I get why people love this game. And I truly, for years, did not understand when I was
You just
playing
didn't see
professionally
that side
why
of it.
people chose to do that. I'm like, you're
It's really
choosing, like,
funny.
but
Yeah,
that's what does happen. You do it long enough, and it's
absolutely.
so easy to be burned out by the,
100%.
years
And
and
you're in
years.
this different trench that nobody else sees. Like that's
Yeah.
it is really different. And it kind of leads me into because I'm really curious. As you have two boys, right?
Yes.
How old are they?
They are right now 4 and 6.
Okay, 4 and 6. You've got some like they're definitely getting into that mode of, especially the 6-year-old, I'm sure, of like
Yes.
playing
Yeah. They're
potentially.
almost 5 and like 6.5. So yeah,
Yeah,
they're old enough now where they're starting to be coordinated enough to play this game.
that's so cool. And you said your husband was you're trying to get him into the sport. So how did you meet your husband? Was it around work or was it outside of it?
Online,
Oh, I met my husband
the
online,
modern
so
dating
I get
story.
it. Everybody tells you should be whatever you met on commercial, I'm sure.
So
So
yeah,
funny.
and he was a college baseball player, so he's very
Okay.
athletic. He just doesn't play that often. So
Yeah.
he's a great partner to play with golf. And then the two boys, um, my oldest, I started doing, well, actually the first tee program in Phoenix has a tiny tees program, which I don't know
Cute.
if that's common, but it's
We
for
don't have that.
4 to 7 year olds, and it's once a month.
Oh,
So it's a
neat.
clinic,
Okay.
and it's a
Cool.
little more informal environment. And so I've taken my boys to one of those, and I mean, I take them out on my own, but to be
Yeah.
around other kids and to see it normalized with
Yeah.
other children, I think is important. And
Yeah.
then my club hosts, they have a junior camp every Sunday.
Sweet.
So I just enrolled my oldest last week. And so
Oh,
we've got 4 weeks in a row. So I'm really hoping to get the bug.
that's
Um,
so cool.
so far, so good.
You haven't been roped in to teach any lessons, have you?
No, but I've offered because
Oh,
my club's
oh my
amazing.
gosh.
But they are so, like, they're well-oiled machines. So if
Yeah.
they need me, they can have me. But I also
Cute.
want my son to learn from somebody else because he doesn't really want to listen to mom. And I'm just
No,
going to be mom for this right
I
now.
get it. I get it.
Eventually, he might learn that I know something.
Oh,
But for
that's
right
so
now,
cute.
if I'm just mom, that's okay.
I kind of love how naive they are. It's really a funny thing, and I feel that from my boys. I forget what they said the other night. I had worked with a couple girls that had started a really cool popsicle business, and they were like, "Oh, why don't you work there anymore?" I was like, "Well, I have my own business, in the
Yeah.
golf business." And they get that, and then they're like, "Well, what happened to the popsicle business?" I was like, "Well, it was really hard through COVID, and they didn't make it." And they were like, "So they had to close it?" I'm like, "Yes." Like that's it. Like
Yep.
this whole world of like, and I'm like, it's kind of how mom's business is. Like I have that's why sometimes I can't pick you up from school because I'm working, and like that's kind of the way this all works. And it's just so cute because it's just something that those
I
little
know.
dots don't connect. And so the day that they realize like what you've done as a golfer, and I mean you just were this past year, weren't you inducted into the Husky like Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
I
It was
mean, that's
incredible.
so cool.
It was
It is
really
so
neat. And it's so
cool.
funny. I did not expect to be blown away the way that I was when I was
Aw,
inducted. I had an incredible class to be inducted with, and then just to be surrounded by people that love the university the way that I do and
yeah,
had such an incredible
yeah.
college experience. And then
Oh,
when
that's
I
awesome.
looked at, it sounds so silly, but some of the people that were in like Isaiah Thomas was in my class. It was like a stud NBA player and had an incredible career. And I'm listening to
Cool.
all these accomplishments of the volleyball player and the other football player. I'm like, God, they were really good. And then when they rolled my tape, I was like, oh no, like this, I'm like
I could hang
I can
there.
hang with these people. Like I have a lot to be proud of too, and so
I
it was
do
special. It
too.
was really cool. And my brother is also in the Washington Hall of Fame, so we were the
Stop.
first
That's
ever
incredible.
sibling duo at Washington. So
Hold on, that is incredible. I mean, that's unusual, even for your parents to look at like what you guys turned into. Like, has to be just incredible. Congratulations.
thank you.
That's so neat, and it's
Well, can I
cool
tell you
that
one funny story of that night? So my
yeah.
parents both, they're retired pharmacists, but they both went to the Washington State University. My
Oh,
brother and I
okay.
both went to University of
There's some
Washington.
competition there, I'm
So
assuming.
we defied, what we were raised by.
Yeah.
So I show up that night and I'm dressed with what I know will have to be a
Formally.
purple jacket on top of. And I look
Mhm.
over, my dad's wearing a gray suit and my mom's wearing a crimson dress. They literally dressed in Washington State colors to the University of Washington Hall of Fame. Like, Mom, Dad, like maybe a little purple tonight, just maybe. Nope.
They couldn't.
They are Cougars through and through.
Oh, and that is so funny. In such a supportive way. That is hilarious that they showed up in that. That's so
Yeah.
memorable. That's so, oh,
Well,
that's
it gave
amazing.
me a
Now,
great leading joke on the start of my speech. I led right with that.
did you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. And you got to do a speech. That's so incredible. When was that? Was it really recent or was it earlier in the year?
No, it was in the fall. It was our homecoming game in the fall. So
Oh
what is that,
my
October?
gosh. That's so neat.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. And now you said you live in Phoenix?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Back in
Now, what
Scottsdale. Yep.
what took you back? What took you to Scottsdale?
A good airport and good weather. That was the only requirements. I didn't
Oh, got
know
it.
really anybody or anything and
So
just picked up and
funny.
moved there because I knew
Where's
that's
your
where I
husband
should be.
from?
He's originally from Florida. We met and married here.
Oh, got
Um,
it. Okay. So
yeah.
that kind of makes sense that kind of a home court for you guys.
Yeah.
That's so
Yes.
cool. So what's kind of next for you? Because I know you're in the midst, I mean, like, well, I guess first of all, and I know we're running past, of course, the time I told you that this would take, but there's so much good here. So just a couple more things. Like, I would love to hear
Sure.
about just your current role, a little bit more about like what an analytic golf channel is and does. That's one thing we'd love to
Sure.
feature is just all the professions in and around the sport for women. So it's really nice to hear from the source, like what that entails. And then lastly is like, what's next for you? Like, what's on the horizon?
Sure. Well, right now, I mean, I've been fortunate because Golf Channel is continuing to push and challenge me in my roles since I
Yeah.
started. So obviously started on the morning show, but then added tournaments. So now
Hmm.
when I might be walking the ground for an LPGA event or an analyst in the booth for a college event.
Cool.
So I added the tournament aspect of it, which is kind of fun to cover the actual live golf and
Yeah.
be face to face and with all the people that you talk about when I
Yeah.
do news, or that's what we call it, or studio shows. So
Yeah.
I started in
So
the
are
studio,
you,
ended up in tournaments.
so for an analyst, you're literally like sitting in the box talking about the play by play of who's
Yes,
coming
if
through
I'm,
that hole or
yeah,
whatnot.
they call that
Yeah.
the tournament lead analyst. And then if
Okay,
I'm a
good.
walking analyst,
Yeah.
which is like on the ground and I just call the shots. And then
Yeah.
I have the studio analyst,
Yeah.
which requires a lot more work. So tournaments, I think, is a little more intuitive for players. So we
Yeah.
get to just tell people what we see if we were to
Hmm.
hit the shot.
Cool.
And then as a studio analyst, I think that role, I enjoy that role more. I think it's a little more challenging, but you create the content. So you take and distill what you've witnessed across
Yeah.
whatever it is. I cover both PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, and college golf.
Hmm.
So I'll watch players or I'll dive into stats and I'll say, you know what, this is what the trend is. This is what you need
Huge.
to watch for. And I really enjoy that part of it. I think that's
Cool.
why I thought I was going to end up as a financial planner because it's the same idea. You
Yeah.
dive into it,
Totally
you
an
figure it
analyst,
out,
right?
and you create a big picture,
Yeah.
thought about a person
Yeah.
and or a golf course. And so I've been fortunate enough to move from covering just the women to also covering the PGA Tour.
That's
And so
neat.
when I was working, I worked waste management as well, as their pregame and postgame
So
analyst.
cool. Yeah.
And so it's been great. I mean, I've been, like I said, fortunate to continue to be challenged. So I don't know what's necessarily next for me. I have a full schedule of working. My next event is LPGA here in Phoenix, so I'll be on the ground. And then
Cool.
I also work the studio shows. I have a studio in my house, so
Oh,
a lot of the
neat.
stuff that you'll see for Golf Central on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, I do from my
From
home,
there.
which is nice.
Well, and one of my, I think, infused questions here to wrap up is just like, how do you do this as a mom of two boys? Because obviously you have to be present at some of these events. Like, I don't know if your husband works from home or how that structure works, but has it been difficult melting that kind of profession with kids? It sounds like having a studio in your home is one step in managing it
Sure.
all. Like, what do you, like, how do you do that?
The biggest thing is obviously when I'm gone, and I
Hmm.
am meticulous to the detail on grocery shopping, laundry, everything before I leave, leaving my husband a list of things to do.
I love it. He
And
appreciates that.
he's just an incredible partner. So
Yeah,
he takes
you can't
care
do
of
without
everything
it.
when I'm gone. And I don't know how, other families make it work, but I thankfully have a great partner.
Yeah.
So he picks up the slack when I'm out of town. And I have family now in town. It was really hard when
Oh,
I was living in
good.
Orlando because we didn't have any family when the boys were born. But
Yeah.
now back in Scottsdale, I have my father-in-law, mother-in-law, my parents, my
Oh
brother,
my gosh.
sister-in-law.
How nice is that?
Yes. So everybody's
Takes a
here in Phoenix
village.
now. So it does. That does not underestimate exactly
No.
what it takes to kind of keep things duct taped together.
I get it. I get it. And sometimes it feels like that's what's holding it together. But yeah, a good, I know, a husband by your side and all that, that you couldn't do without it. That's so
Yep.
cool. Well, I know I could probably drum up like 10 more questions for you, but it's been such a pleasure just getting to hear your story.
Likewise.
Love adding women to this community because it's just such a good way to highlight professional women in the sport. Like there's so much out there, um, even beyond playing, I think for women to take part in it. So it's fun to see and hear just from you and what your experience has been. So thank you for all that
Well,
time.
thank you. No, thank you. And thank you
Yeah,
for what you're doing. Inspiring a lot of people, I'm
absolutely.
sure.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I've got the fun part. Like looking the part in the course is always fun. So it is. It's fun, challenging. Women are tough in terms of buying clothes, but for the most part, it's been so fun to create something new. And just this is the kind of energizing part of it is just finding what
Cool.
is really, as you know, like a very tight knit community. Like golf is small, like so many industries, but I think the women within it are even more niche and
Yes,
easy to connect
definitely.
with. I think we're all looking for a way to, you know, I think band together to some degree. So it's really nice
I
to
agree.
have you. And thank you for all your time, Paige.
Thank you.